Good evening. I welcome you on behalf of Madras Tax Bar for our 144th webinar. Today, Jayalakshmi will be talking on geographical indications, another very interesting topic and a little out of the box topics for us, the tax practitioners. So we're looking forward in hearing from Jayalakshmi, and we shall discover more on this topic as she keeps proceeding with her presentation. I think this is more on, this will be more touching on economic criteria of this thing. And Jayalakshmi has also completed her master's in economics. So we're looking forward in hearing this topic. So she'll be presenting the entire session, and after the end of the round, we will have the discussion round where we can ask our questions and we can give our inputs as well. So thank you once again for all for joining today. We're looking forward in hearing from Jayalakshmi. Over to you, Jayalakshmi. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Prithvi. It's always a proud privilege to be here in this fantastic platform, and I'm once again very, very grateful for giving me this opportunity. I thank my seniors, Shri N. Venkatraman sir, but for whom and whose guidance and encouragement we would not be here today. I thank Muthu sir, Mr. Muthu Venkatraman, for being the constant support and pillar that he has always been and guided us throughout. And a big, big shout out to Aryaman for all the cooperation and so much of help that he has done to put all this through. We'd start with the presentation. Can I share my screen, Prithvi?
Yes, you can.
Yes. So geographical indication and analysis. So what is geographical indication? Generally, intellectual property rights are divided into many categories, like subclasses, classes, where patent talks about the scientific aspect, scientific innovations, etc. Copyright is more form of expression based, like literary, musical, artistic, theatrical, poetry, and the like. And the trademark talks about the goodwill that somebody earns through the trade that they undertake, right? So when some, a manufacturer or a hotelier or a shoe seller has been doing a fantastic job delivering, goods very authentically and very sincerely to his people, people come for his quality. They come for, their trade expertise. So that goodwill or the name, the trade good name that's associated is the trademark. And when we're talking about design rights, design is more like how a product looks like at the outside. I mean, again, this has two subcategories, namely industrial design, where the inner engineering of a product can be, safeguarded, and the intellectual property rights of that can be safeguarded. And there's also a external design. Like, say, for example, if I'm making a very unique looking mixie, like we had all these Vidium and Preeti Blue Leaf, where the mixie itself looks very unique and very good. And similarly, ovens came up. Suddenly we had these televisions where the screens become very thin. Excuse me. So in these circumstances, designs can be, design marks can be. Now, the uniqueness of geographical indication is when you travel, in train, as a, in our childhood or as children, we would remember that when suddenly a few stations come, right, the whole environment will change. Like, say, for example, as a child, when we used to board the Tirunelveli Express, and we keep traveling through station after station, exactly around 5 o'clock, we'll reach Manapparai. And the entire place will be aromatic. It'll smell of jaggery and, verkadle, groundnuts, and it's just so welcoming. And that'll be like the best snack we could ever have, like freshly made kadla mittais, sorry, Kovilpatti, and freshly made kadla mittais, or when you're crossing Manaparai and the murukku smell, the smell of aromatic oil, and that kind of lights up the entire space, right? So we have these amazing uh, memories from childhood that are defined by the food products or any agricultural produce associated with any specific place. Like, say, for example, bun roti. When we cross the bun roti station, immediately, we'll be waiting for our palaparams, our jackfruits. So this this uniqueness of a particular geographical location, when it is identified with a product, where the product attains its uniqueness through soil or through history or through culture, all that can be also, all those marks can also be guarded as geographical indication. So geographical indication, before I move on to that, I would also want to talk a little about trademark, because having a base in trademark would be primordial for to get some hang of geographical indication, because both of them work in a similar, more or less similar manner, because the trade or the trade name is what is the main key that is safeguarded here. So when we come to trademark law, just a minute. When we come to trademark law, we have Trademark Act of 1940, where this was very similar to the United Kingdom's Trademark Act, where it was very basic in nature. And subsequently, the Trademark and Merchandise Marks Act 1958 was brought about, which was a consolidated act that contained provisions from all over, like from IPC, like CRPC, Sea Customs, etc. And subsequently, after India had signed the TRIPS agreement, that is when the Trademarks Act 1999 had been enacted in order to keep up with the rules and regulations and the prescriptions of the TRIPS. Section 2ZB of the Trademarks Act talks about trademark. So trademark means a mark capable of being represented graphically, distinguishing the goods or services of one person from another. And it may include shapes of goods, packaging, or a combination of colors, etc. So what is graphical representation? Any mark that I affix in my billboard, or in any poster, or in any of my invoices and bills, which represent my trade, my company, or my product. So that is a trademark. Again, there are two distinctions. One is a logo mark and one is a name mark. A name mark is where the product's name itself is registered, and a logo mark is where a particular pictorial representation is registered as my emblem for the trade, my logo for the trade. So there are these specifics that the Trademark Act does not allow to be registered, where, say, for example, a mark is devoid of distinctive character. So what is distinctive character? Anything that makes me identify my particular trade. So for example, if I'm going to if I run a hotel and I'm going to call it the hotel, it has no distinction at all. It's yet another place where people eat. So I can't call it an eatery or a hotel, or a shoe shop cannot be called a shoe shop, because I cannot claim rights over that particular term, because that defines my business itself, right? So it has to have a distinctive character. It has to have a proper name, proper noun before your to represent who you are, like Bata, like Puma, like Nike, etc. And it should not be descriptive in nature. So when something is descriptive, say, for example, if I call myself the good hotel or excellent shoes, these cannot be again trademarked, because these terms are applicable to all the manufacturers out there. All of them will be good hotels, and most of them will be excellent shoes. So I cannot claim rights over terms like that. And marks or indications customary in current language or trade practice, and also the geographical area from which, or territory from which it comes. But there is an exception where the mark has acquired a goodwill by usage. So the typical example is the Madras Baking Company, right? So it is a baking company, it is in Madras, but the goodwill that it has acquired, it's been in existence for decades together. So people have gone and become customers of Madras Baking Company. Somebody I know fanatics who swear by the breads and cakes there. So when people have constantly gone to a place because of the quality of service that they provide, and that place has acquired a goodwill, so that should be given more leverage. So the Trademarks Act also says that while typically filing a trademark application, you will have to show them, you have to submit an affidavit, giving all the details and data of from when you've been using the mark, and show some invoices to prove that you've been in the trade for a long time, and also establish some clientele relationship. And if you have awards to say that you're a stalwart in the business, very, very well and good, your mark will be preferred more. So all these will be looked into, and it'll be properly scrutinized before your mark is registered. So when there is enough and more goodwill, then that those marks cannot be rejected registration under the Trademark Act. Now, further prohibitions are when a few marks are, very specifically aimed at deceiving. Like, say, for example, how many of us would have gone to, Tirupati or some, other locations, and we would have come across so many Sarana Bhavans, but not even one would be the authentic Sarana Bhavan. There are Vasanta Bhavans, there is Vasantam Bhavan, there is Shri Vasanta Bhavan, there have been Shri Sarana Bhavans and Saravana Bhavans, and etc. Right? So from the outside, everything will look very similar, very, very deceptively similar. But when you go in and when you taste the food, you will know that it's not that. That's not the place that you're looking for. So similarly, any mark that is aimed at deceiving the public, or just kept in such a way to cause confusion, so those cannot be registered. And again, marks that affect religious susceptibilities cannot be registered. Scandalous or obscene names and logos cannot be registered, and anything that's prohibited under the Emblems and Names Act. So something like the emblems and names says I cannot have any national flag or any flag of these excuse me, any flag of army, navy, etc. as my logo, and I cannot have the government emblem, Asoka Chakra, etc. And shapes of goods also cannot be brought under trademark. Excuse me. And trademarks are generally registered under various classes of trade. And these classes came about to be listed at the NICE convention of, the Paris Convention had various rounds. And in the NICE convention, the trademark, the international classification of goods and services as different trades were brought about, and 34 goods, 34 headings, the trade of goods were classified, and 11 headings, the rendering of service was classified. So say, for example, anybody who's involved in the chemical or fertilizer industry would come under class 1. The pharma industry traders will come under class 5. And the medical, surgical instruments manufacturers and traders will come under class 10. Musical instrument traders will come under 15, furniture, etc. will come under 20, and clothing and footwear, headgear will come under 25, and 30 is dedicated to coffee, tea, and other beverages and spices manufacturers. So similarly, you have classifications for say legal service providers, medical service providers, and education service providers. Marketing is class 35, like that. So what is the how is trademark and geographical indications, how do they go hand in hand? Or what is the similarities between the two? The only similarity is that both are driven by the name of trade. But what is different is that a trademark is an individual right. Somebody starts a business, they run it so efficiently to get, to acquire a goodwill. And that goodwill is what they have, rightly secured by a trademark, and it becomes their property. But in geographical indication, there is a geographical locality, and because of either the rich soil that it has, the topographical arrangement of that place, or because of the great history that it has gone through, certain products emerge as the signature signature of that particular place. So those products, those signature products, are what are safeguarded under the Geographical Indications Act. Now, when we're talking about it's important for us to have a look at international trade and intellectual property, how they go hand in hand. So it's just a small graph of sorts. So Paris Convention is the first international agreement on industrial property that was signed by 11 countries, where in 1883. And subsequent to that, in a parallel, there was also the General Agreement on Trade and Tariff, Tariff and Trade by the United Nations. So that was signed in 1948. And that looked at substantial reduction of tariffs and trade barriers. So that tried to ease trade relation between countries, and was mainly aiming at bringing about a very smooth process of international trade. And by then, the Tariff Convention, signatories of Tariff Convention, who kept increasing by the year, they all formed part of the NICE agreement, where thanks to the NICE agreement, NICE classification was brought about, where all of them agreed to classify their goods under these 45 headings so that it will be easy for them to trade. Because anything in an should be put in an orderly manner in order to, and standardized manner in order to make the trade efficient. So this NICE convention is of primordial importance, because that is when it became simplified. Like there was a chart to say where each trader belongs. And then in 1967, the World Intellectual Property Organization came into existence. And this came into existence to promote and protect intellectual property across the world. So the main aim was to, trade is important, very well and good, but it's also important that my intellectual property should not be, taken away, or my rights should not be, respected. So WIPO came about for that. And it was in the Uruguay round of the GATT that TRIPS came to be signed, and the World Trade Organization was formed in 1995. So World Trade Organization took the place of GATT, and WTO kind of very strategically brought about mechanisms to work intellectual property, efficiency of intellectual property, a legal framework in every country, every signatory country. But one beauty of TRIPS is that TRIPS basically focused only on wines and spirits, like, Scotland and Paris and a lot of other international members were manufacturers of wines and spirits, and that was their key niche market in the global scenario. So they aimed at protecting the uniqueness of each of their wines and spirits. So that was given more importance. It was in 2001 in the Doha round that India kind of suggested that pharmaceutical trademarks are also, pharmaceutical intellectual property also had to be protected. And that's where the intellectual property became, expanded further. And now we still are expanding more and more. Now, when we look at the WIPO definition for geographical indication, it says GI is a sign used on products that have a specific geographical origin and possess qualities or a reputation that are due to that origin. In order to function as a GI, a sign must identify a product as originating in a given place. In addition, the qualities, characteristics, or reputation of the product should be essentially due to the place of origin. So here again, the definition mainly emphasizes two things, where there should be a geographical origin that's known for a product, and the attributes of a geographical origin should actually contribute to the existence of a product in itself. So when these two are there, then GI is said to be granted. Subsequently, I mean, when we're looking at the aspects or the broad areas in which TRIPS kind of guided in formulating this whole concept, TRIPS in the Uruguay round brought in IP rules into multinational trade systems, and it discussed under 5 broad headings. How general provisions and basic principles of multilateral trade systems apply to international trade. And they also wanted to bring about minimum standard of protection that each of the members had to give. So each of the members had to agree and sign that they would vouch for giving the minimum standard of protection. And the procedures were also, taught how procedures should be made more effective and, more standardized. And even dispute resolution mechanism was kind of introduced, and guidance was given to that effect. And they brought something called the transitional arrangement, wherein TRIPS said the developed countries had to bring about these changes right away and gave 1 year's time. However, developing countries, they understood that there would be a few, disadvantages wherein in the mechanism of enforcement, and therefore they gave a period of 5 years for the developing countries to say fulfill all these obligations, and the underdeveloped countries were given a period of 11 years, and now it's subsequently extended even till 2021. So when we're talking about TRIPS on GI, TRIPS also defines what a GI is. So again, it also talks about indication. So it should be distinctive in nature. There should be an indication. And then the origin in a territory of a member. So again, the geographical location is of primordial importance. And where a given quality, reputation, or other characteristics of good is essentially attributable to the geographic origin. So there should be 3 things. One should be an identity, one should be the geographical territory in itself, and then there should be a connection between the territory and the product. So like we already explained earlier, TRIPS was more focusing on wines and spirits. And what it aimed at doing was to cut out unfair trade practices, and it was going against, products that were counterfeits, where people were riding on the geographical indication that other commodities had. Like, say, for example, I cannot call a product, I cannot call some wine manufactured in Madras as champagne. So those were what TRIPS, had very categorically stated. Now, when it comes to geographical indications of India, there were 3 wake-up calls that happened before the Indian government took it very seriously and enacted the Geographical Indications of Goods Registration and Protection Act 1999. The first wake-up call was the mysterious Curcuma longa, which was tried to be patented by the University of Mississippi Medical Center, US in 95. And they called it a wonder drug that would heal wounds. And what was that? That was our very own turmeric. So they said they invented medicinal properties in turmeric, and therefore that required to be patented. Now, the Council for Scientific and Industrial Research, the CSIR, they have something called the Traditional Knowledge Digital Library. So they maintain this library to collect data of all traditional knowledge that India possesses. It could be in the field of medicine, in the field of science, in the field of any traditional knowledge that we had. So all these Ayurvedic, Siddha, Unani, all these home remedies, all these medicines were neatly documented. The Shastras were, looked into, and CSIR fought the battle so strong that after seeing all our, if I'm not wrong, around 32 papers were submitted to show that turmeric was in existence since time immemorial in India. And finally, India won the battle and the patent was revoked in 1997. Now, the second wake-up call was neem oil. Though neem oil patenting and trademark, patenting of neem oil happened way earlier in 1985. No problems started because of, people patenting the formulation and calling it pesticides and potent anti-fungi in the US. And generally, the United States has a very secret form of, patenting, where they don't look at prior art. They don't look at, they don't go deep into studying the already existent scientific inventions. They grant patent, and subsequent to which the same is challenged. Almost exactly opposite of how we function here. May it be trademark or patent or geographical indications or whatever. Here we have to give an application, and subsequent to the application, the registry will scrutinize our application. Whatever, if it's a patent, they will look at the prior art. If it's trademark, they will look at the already existing marks that are there. And they will issue something called the examination report, or more like an objection notice, where they would say, for this reasons, your patent or your trademark cannot be registered. So then we explain to the registrar, we give our substantiations, and we say how it's different. We submit papers, and it's only subsequent to that it will even be advertised to the local authorities. I mean, local people. So once it's advertised, again, any third parties are called for to fight this particular case, where to say that it's infringing their mark or it's infringing their patent. It's only subsequent to all these processes would any patent or a trademark be granted. However, in the US, it's opposite, and therefore everything gets patented easily. But we are never sure how long the patent is going to last. So here, what happens in this case of neem oils and formulations, W.R. Grace secured the rights to the formula. So they go ahead and file a patent application before the European Patent Office along with US Department of Agriculture. And what they do is they don't stop there. They sue Indian companies who have been all along using neem emulsion formulas, to stop manufacturing those, because now they have the patent rights over neem oil. So that once again, indigenous knowledge was tried to be usurped by the Western piracy. So here what happens in 1993, the neem campaign is initiated. And in 2000, the EPO rules in favor of India after saying all the traditional knowledge, thanks to CSIR again. And then the appeal, US goes on appeal over this. And finally, in 2005, US loses the battle, and the trademark, the patent is nullified. So this has taken 11 years of legal battle. So that is when India, realized that it's important to save our traditional knowledge. But there was one other episode. That is the episode of Basmati. So basically, rice grown outside the territorial confines of India was sought to be patented. By who? By a firm in the US called Rice Tech Inc. And apparently, they have been all along manufacturing and labeling their product as Texmati, calling it American style basmati rice, and they are a little higher grade called Kasmati, and they have been branding it as Indian style basmati rice. The main issue here was they filed patents in they got patents in 1997 for 20 new variants, and these variants had stated that these are basmati rice variants that would that would facilitate effective growth of basmati in US, wherein the climatic conditions of India did not matter, topographical arrangement did not matter, and the taste and the aroma was almost identical. So that is when the government took a serious stand. The then government set up a Basmati Development Fund to save the mark. There was a long legal battle, and subsequent to which, after all our research papers were submitted, again thanks to CSIR's Traditional Knowledge Digital Library, the patent name was changed from Inventions from Basmati Rice and Grains to Rice Lines BAS 867, RT117, and RT121. And the curious aspect here is these three, 867, 117, and 121, are these Basmati rice strands that belong to Pakistan. So only those were patented and the others were left alone. So this was a great victory for India. So that is when geographical indications became thoroughly covered by a proper legislation in India. And it was enacted in 1999 and it came into effect in 2003. But what happens to traditional knowledge? The Biodiversity Act 2002 was enacted to safeguard the traditional knowledge. So Section 6 of the Biodiversity Act mandates that an application has to be made before the NBA, National Biodiversity Authority, wherein you have to seek approval. If you're taking any of the Indian species of biodiversity and claiming any patent over it, before you could claim patent over any such Indian species, the prior art, the already existing traditional knowledge had to be looked into, and the authority has to give a stamp that this has never been in our knowledge earlier, and we never knew of this aspect, and this is new. This is uniquely an invention, and only then can the same be patented and taken credit for. Now, even recently, one of these cases came up where a traditional knowledge was challenged. Recently, Mrs. Colgate-Palmolive Company tried to patent their mouthwash formulae, wherein stating it had nutmeg and jaifal and it's extremely effective. So then the TKDLR, Traditional Knowledge Digital Library of CSIR came to rescue, and it submitted proof, and with huge historical data to say that nutmeg and jaifal will have all along been used by us for oral hygiene and to cure mouth related diseases, and therefore the patent was rejected. So this is a very active mechanism to keep our knowledge and keep our intellectual property guarded. Now, when we look at the definition of geographical indication, I'll just read this first. Section 2E of the Geographical Indications of Goods Registration and Protection Act 1999 talks about geographical indication. It says, in relation to goods, geographical indication in relation to goods means an indication which identifies such goods as agricultural goods, natural goods, or manufactured goods as originating or manufactured in the territory of a country or a region or locality in that territory, where a given quality, reputation, or other characteristics of such good is essentially attributable to its geographical origin. And in case where such goods are manufactured goods, one of the activity of either production, processing, or preparation of the goods concerned takes place in such territory, region, or locality as the case may be. So again here, geographical indication is confined to just three forms. It could be an agricultural good. It could be any natural good, like, gemstones that we get, or shells and pebbles and things like that. Or manufactured commodity. Handicrafts would include in manufactured commodity, food stuff would be included, and some commodity that's very unique for that locality would be included. And what was required was the quality and reputation and characteristics must have a basis, of link with the geographical territory or origin. And in case of manufactured commodity, it need not start and end in that particular place. One aspect of manufacture must happen there. So for Tirupur, for Salem fabric, for instance, you can't say the cotton must originate in Salem, the manufacture has to happen in Salem, the packaging has to happen there. Not necessarily. The main process happens there, and you can source material from elsewhere. So I've just cut it down in points, indicating an identity, the kind of goods, and what it represents, etc. Now there is an explanation. The explanation says that it is not required that every time a geographical indication should have a territory's name in it. Say, for example, Basmati does not have the territory's name, or Shahi Lichis, which belong to Bihar. They're not classified, or they are not categorized by the name of the territory. So that again is the explanation. Now, GI also comes under the nice classification, where it's only confined to goods, and therefore geographical indications can be applied for in those specific categories that fall within the 34 classes. So for GI, again, like trademark, we'll have to file an application. But one extra thing is we'll have to file the documents relating to the origin of that particular product. So a lot of research in history is required to see where the product actually originated, how it's uniquely connected to that territorial region, and then it's registered. Now, this is a small map that we have tried to make of the GIs, and it's hardly even 10% of the entire geographical indications that belong to India. So this has about 30 marks, but actually India has more than 355 marks as on 2020. So here we start with Pashmina shawl in Kashmir. And then the painting is the Rajasthan Kangra painting. Then the sari is Bandhani sari. Then it's the Basmati rice. Then we have the blue pottery of Jaipur. Then we have the gray fabric is chikankari work by UP. And then the teal color is the Tussar silk of Bihar. And then Shahi Lichis. And then Assam's Muga silk is there. And then we have Chaksheshong shawl of the Nagaland. And then Shantiniketan leather products. And then we have Patachitra work of Orissa. And then Madhya Pradesh, there is Tikamgarh metal work. And then we have leather toys of MP. And then Kutch work in Gujarat, it's Kutch embroidery. And some gems and jewelry, gems from Gujarat. And then Paithani saris, famous in Maharashtra. Then strawberries from Mahabaleshwar, grapes of Nasik, and Coorg Arabiata coffee, and then your Kolhapuri shoes, and Nimmalakunta leather puppets, and Tirupati laddu. Then you have Alapi cardamom, Erode turmeric, Kanjivaram saris, Arumbavur wood sculptures, Bhavani Jamakalam, and Aranmula mirrors. In fact, in those days, Aranmula mirrors are made with metal itself. There's no glass. So the metal is polished in such a way that it becomes a mirror to be used. So that was used by the royal queens and kings. Now, we have tried to make, a route map. It's impossible. I wouldn't say impossible, but it's too tedious to make a route map for the entire India. So it's a humble attempt to make a route map of geographical location, geographical indications in Tamil Nadu. I hope you enjoy it. So it starts with Kanjipuram. Then Arani, this again is a silk cluster. Where they are uniquely lightweight and elegant. And Salem has both fabric as well as Venpatte. So this Venpatte is used in almost every marriage that we know. And Salem fabric is a major export commodity. Erode is famous for its manjai, a turmeric. So Bhavani Jamakalam, initially the weavers were silk weavers, but they came down and found a profession, alternate profession for themselves. Koda embroidery is a tribal art. Nilgiri is orthodox. And Coimbatore is known for its cotton as well as wet grinder. I'm sure every household had one of this in the previous generations. The breakfast maker. And these Parani Virupaksha bananas are the Malaparam that we all know. This is the main ingredient in Parani Panjamritam. And both belong to the Parani hills. The biblical putte that we all know. Again, every household will have one of these. Tilapia main gate. This is a variant of Malapayam, a little sweeter and yellow in color. The Madurai Sugudi, super soft cotton. Known for its big, thick petals and fragrance. And this is the Shilvadi Kapoor Palgua. Can you believe it? They add very less sugar in this. Apparently, the milk is sweet by itself. Thanks to the Malabar link, I think. These tall coconuts are also a geographical indication. The exquisite jewelry, which we all rave as the pride of Tamil. Pattanadai Pal. And Kogul Patel. The Kalyani Sari, Chettinad cotton. So these are Arambavur wood carvings. The trees taken from Tiruchi Perambalur and Tanjavur Kumbakonam. You can see these in temple carvings. And this is more or less like a GI capital, having 5 geographical indications. I think the only musical instrument that has a GI in Tamil Nadu is the veena. And these are Tanjavur metal works. It's 3D representation of temples and figurines that are stored in glass. These Swamimalai bronze idols have traced their knowledge of process to the Vedas and Shilpa Shastra. So it's done as per Vedic procedure. And how many of us knew that Kuttuvelakku was a geographical indication? It's called the Nachiyar Kovil Kuttuvelakku. And we'll go on silk sarees. And then we come straight to Mahabalipuram. Stone carvings of Mahabalipuram. Yes. So when we observe this roadmap, what do we get by it? What we can very clearly see that there are few places that are completely built with completely surrounded by culture, by art, by carvings and paintings and music, expression of artistic nature. And there are these products that are specifically GI for its agricultural base, for the richness in the soil, for the topographical makeup of that particular place. Like we see the Western Ghats, it's filled with agricultural produce like the manjal or the in fact there is also one more GI, the Kodaikanal Pund, and then you have various products that are based on agriculture. And then there are these geographical indications like the Tanjavur painting or the Veenai or the Mahabalipuram sculpture or the Kanjivaram sari, where it is because of the continuous rule of the kings and the royal dynasties which had these as capitals and places of high importance, and there were a lot of people who kept coming, a lot of international guests who kept coming in those years, that they had to have there was this abundance of art and expression that was thriving in those areas, and that becomes the signature of that place itself. Like when I go to Mahabalipuram, even a dead end would be filled with sculptures, right? Every rock will have the story of ancient years inscribed in it. So this geographical indication, when studied deeply, it kind of gives us a time travel effect where we can go and see how things were in those old days. When we see a Chettinad Kottan or, a Kandangi sari, we know how the sari is manufactured in such a way that it suits the geographical location. It can be worn for the entire day. It's soft and it's rich, and right. And the Kotan, that's what they would have used on a daily basis. So when we see all this, it kind of gives us a glimpse of how things were then. And it is verily our, art and our history, our very own cultural history, that has to be protected through GIs. In fact, the Sculpture College in Mahabalipuram is doing a fantastic job. There are various UNESCO sites in and around India, but Mahabalipuram sculpture has got a GI mark in itself, and it's thriving. Even today, when we go and see, there are easily some 100-odd sculptors who are, having their regular, work, and they keep exporting to various countries in and around, right? So that kind of, it's also like a initiative from the government, from the people at large. Everybody put together, the whole geographical indication gets protected, or the art gets protected. Now we look at 3 unique cases in geographical indication, and we close with that. So the first case is regarding the Darjeeling tea, the Darjeeling episode. So it was the first ever case that was argued in the High Court of Calcutta, where Tea Board of India versus ITC Limited, where ITC had a tea lounge, the one that's there in the picture, that was called Darjeeling, right? So immediately that was the Tea Board of India owned the GI rights for Darjeeling tea. So immediately they jumped up and they filed this civil suit saying it's an infringement of their geographical indication. But here the court observed that merely because somebody uses the term Darjeeling and they have a history of manufacturing tea, you cannot put 1 and 2 together and say that they have infringed your rights, because nowhere in their mark the word tea is there, right? So therefore, this suit filed by Tea Board was dismissed. The Darjeeling Lounge is still around, and it's a beautiful place to be. And the next is the Laddu story. This is extremely unique because Tirupati Laddu, where GI was awarded to Tirumala Tirupati Devasthanam, which is an individual entity. So generally, I mean, when we're talking about geographical indication, we always talk about how, a section of people, or how the entire geographical location is known for that particular product. But here, of course, the minute we say Tirupati Laddu is what comes to our mind. But how can geographical indication be given to TTD alone? So there was this case where a rectification application was filed before the registry, challenging the geographical indication tag that was granted to TTD. RS Praveen Raj versus TTD, rectification application number 2 against GI application number 121. In this case, though the petitioner applicant was litigating made a very elaborate affidavit, there was no representation. So in the end, it was dismissed with cost. But the reasoning given by the authority was very unique. The contentions that was raised by Mr. R.S. Praveen Raj was that GI cannot be granted to a sole entity. It is a collection of people, and therefore any individual person, a trademark can be given to an individual person, but not GI. And then he said it would violate religious sentiments, because you can't call Tirupati Laddu as a manufactured product or an industrial commodity, because that is very sacred and very auspicious. But the authority cited an EU Council regulation example of a case of Karlovarsky Suchar, where a single producer of traditional bread, they were granted rights because they were exceptionally good, and people kept thronging their place purely for the goodness of that bread that they had manufactured. So that was given a GI tag in EU. And therefore, similarly, parallel was drawn, and they said Laddu was also a foodstuff, and therefore it very much came under geographical indication. And therefore, and Tirupati Though TTD is an entity, there are various employees who are working under TTD who keep manufacturing laddus, and therefore very much it is by a collection of people, and further religious sentiments were not hurt. That's what was ordered, and therefore the RA was rejected. So that is like the victory story of Venkatachalapati himself. So now this is more like a quiz. There is a typical case where GI failed, but the art thrived. Okay, there's one product where the geographical indication tag was granted, but we all buy it. It's available in the local market. We know they are made by local manufacturers, but knowing fully well that it has no relation to the geographical identity as such, because the processing, manufacture, everything is done only in your local market, we still buy it and we rave about it. What is it? Any guesses?
Kadla mithai. Groundnut chikki.
No, but see, with geographical indication, people can't call it Kovilpatti Kadla Mithai. Kovilpatti Kadla Mithai, if somebody calls it, then it is violation of GI. But they can make Kadla Mithai and sell it. It's just that they cannot use the geographical indication of Kovilpatti before the Kadla Mithai.
Is it manjal?
Other guesses?
Manjal? Turmeric?
No, but they have you known anybody who sells Erode turmeric, calling it Erode turmeric, but not made in Erode?
Tirunelveli Alva.
No.
Talapakatti biryani.
Tirunelveli Alva has not yet gotten a geographical indication tag. It's a very interesting case. In fact, in Tirunelveli Alva, they have filed the application, but people who have filed the application are all a cluster of Alva makers other than Iruttukadai. So the question is whether Tirunelveli Alva is Iruttukadai's property, or because Iruttukadai has immense goodwill. So that's a very unique case again. It's very interesting. Not
Kanchipuram. Kanchipuram silk. Kanchipuram silk.
No, I mean, have people who sell silk as Kanchipuram, but they have not woven in Kanchipuram?
Yes, of course, because what majority of what you will find in the market, it is called Kanchipuram silk, but they are not Kanchipuram silk as by the GI.
No, the question seems to be different. I think Jayalakshmi can use that.
Maybe Kanchipuram silk is also.
No, I think it is Kumbakonam coffee, as Bhaskar sir has put.
No, but Kumbakonam coffee is not a GI yet. I showed you all the GI that are there in Tamil Nadu.
What about the Palani Panchamritam?
No, but you cannot, nobody can sell Palani Panchamritam adulterated. You get it from the Palani temple itself.
Is it Tindukal Puttu?
Maybe there are, manufacturers who try to deceive, but still we will buy it believing it is Dindukal Puttu. Even Kanchipuram sari for that matter, when it's sold in various places, it's an act of deceiving. Right? We still buy it thinking it is from Kanchipuram. Sorry, I'm disappointing all of you. I'll just give you the answer and then it'll be like, oh my God, I knew it moment. The Tanjavur painting, right? All of us get it customized. We tell what gods we want. We buy clocks made of Tanjavur painting, and we know it's not made in Tanjavur. The art form has thrived so much that, in fact, even in the 1950s, there were settlement of artists who went from Tanjavur to Srirangam, Ranganatha Swami Kovil, Madavidi, and settled themselves there. They had classes, extensive classes to, propagate the art form. So the art form thrived, and it's fantastic. There are, even art galleries in US that make Tanjavur painting, which means that Tanjavur painting has zero connection with the base of territory, namely Tanjavur, except for the art form, the way it is done.
I'll mute him.
Yeah. Okay. So it's completely GI has completely failed, but for a good cause, right? The art has thrived so much, and in fact, when we look at the manuscripts or how Tanjavur painting was initially done, it was done with natural dyes, very similar to how vegetable dyes were used in kalamkari or other forms of art. So it is beautiful how Tanjavur painting has traveled beyond all these boundaries. And one sad state is there aren't too many painters back in Tanjavur when compared to the painters outside. Right. A decade or so ago, when we had gone to Tanjavur, we went there trying to find painters who have like these beautiful paintings of Tanjavur, but we couldn't find as many. Like when you go to Madurai, the place is filled with Mallipu, right? The minute you go to that place, you get a sense of that, the whole speciality. When you go to Tirunelveli, I'm sure at least some 5 people will be talking about Alva to you. But in Tanjavur, maybe because there are too many GIs associated there, so the others are given more importance. But Tanjavur painting does not have its base built so well in Tanjavur. So this is one case where the GI failed, but the art thrived. The last slide. So what are we looking at, steps for promoting GI? There are circulars of customs, that which notifies if there is any imports that are made infringing my intellectual property, which will also include GI. I can write to the commissioner and I can stall the clearance. But apart from that, there are no any export promotion schemes that are made purely to propagate GIs. Of course, we have all state emporiums that do a very good job in selling all our GIs and promoting them. But very unfortunate that when the minute now it's the era of internet, and the minute you Google for something, you want to purchase a painting or you want to purchase a furniture, the government could enable digital media in such a way that immediately the nearest GI would come to your rescue. If you're looking for gifts, immediately the nearby articrafts that are there should immediately pop up on your screen, so that you will at least be tempted to have a look at it. Because a lot of GI people who are practicing these handicrafts are doing it for their daily sustenance. For example, the Bhavani Jamakalam, the weavers hardly get around 2,000 a week, and their work involves around some 10 hours of rigorous labor. Sculptors in Mahabalipuram, in order to make a sculpture of 2 feet, 2.5 feet, they spend 20 days, and it's all hand done. Like machine is hardly some 20% of the work, where they just chisel out the first part of the stone block. So I think governments can pitch in, can take more initiative and digitize the whole thing, and try and make advertisements of geographical indications more, not only in the websites, but also everywhere in digital platforms, so that people get to know about the geographical indication. When I chose this topic, there were many people who were really interested to know what is this something very new. So awareness has to be brought about, and government can also partner with these handicraft and handloom people, and bring about a change, and make this craft thrive, because a lot of handloom is labor intensive, and I very surely very sad to say that, but future generations are not taking it up. The weavers say in a lot of documentaries, weavers have stated that their next gen are not weavers anymore. The wood carvers, next generations are not wood carvers anymore, right? Sculptors anymore. So that is a little sad state. And effective protection mechanism also is to be granted, where their rights are protected, and counterfeit does not get more market than them. And counterfeit market has to be kept in place. So with this I close. What more can we do to save geographical indications? Opinions and views are welcome.
Thank you, Jayalakshmi. It was another excellent presentation by you. A very interesting topic. In fact, I was one of those persons who was very curious to know what you're going to speak on. Like
Yeah.
we spoke about the phone before the thing started. So excellent presentation.
Thank you. I would again thank MTV, and special thanks to my senior NV sir. I mean, for teaching us how to research on a topic, how to dive deep and get to know what is the reality before sharing any thought about it. And thanks a lot to Muthu for his constant encouragement and support. And thanks a lot to everyone who, helped me put this show up. Special thanks to Aryaman for all the support and being there throughout. Thank you so much.
Jayalakshmi, you can stop sharing the screen.
Yes.
We can have the
In fact, discussion. I mean, what more can we do to save GI is can be taken up as discussion now.
Yes. So all the participants, you can come up with your ideas on what more can be done to save GIs. So the platform is open. I invite our members to kindly come and give their opinion on the talk, or if there's any doubt, or their opinions as well. Thank you.
Hi, Jayalakshmi, good presentation. Your
Thank
audio, yeah, excellent presentation and a lot of efforts, painstaking efforts.
Thank you.
I have two questions for you. One is there was some news on this Kiranalli, which has properties for curing jaundice, and attempts being made to patent Kiranalli. And the second is with reference to Tulasi. There was some more attempts to make it in the context of bronchitis or throat related. Your thoughts?
Yes, this Western piracy has been there. They're constantly trying to take each and every herb, anything that has medicinal property. The pharma industry is just waiting to patent it, because the minute something is patented, though it is, in the traditional knowledge of a lot of, not only India, even Indonesia and Thailand have a lot of traditional knowledge. So globally, I think traditional knowledge has to be secured in a great manner. And I think it is high time US thought about revisiting their procedure of patent filing, because something cannot be given such a monopoly status where you can't go ahead and, call something which is not yours, and then you can't expect others to come and, fight a big battle. All said and done, we are all developing nations, right? So it involves a lot of cost, effort, and energy from our government to invest in these legal battles, which could be very well avoided in the first place if they had done the traditional knowledge search or the prior art search, extensively. So not just this, there are quite a lot of, like even the there were some pharma companies that tried to even in 2019 or 2015, I'm not sure, they again tried for turmeric, they again tried for nutmeg. No, so every spice has this kind of Western piracy happening against them. It's only up to us. I think CSIR gets more and more work, and the digital library gets more and more used, and I think a few advocates should, render service in this aspect. Very, very, that's crucial to save our tradition and our culture. When everything is being given free of cost to us, like just hearsay, and we follow it and we get cure. It's sad that somebody else is monetizing it.
If I have to make a mocha joke out of it, GI has become GI Joe.
Yeah, sad, actually.
Thanks.
But unless there is implementation in place, it's very difficult, sir.
We should get use of this CSIR digital library regularly, so that we can also learn what kind of goods we are having. So
Yes.
that itself, so many people were not knowing what traditional medicine and other things. So
Yes.
we have to get we should go and get the digital library, and then further we can proceed, I think so.
Very true, madam. In fact, even when we are given an option between, traditional medicine and allopathy, we tend to move towards allopathy. We tend to chew those sweet tablets and be done with it. Nobody, how many of us are willing to drink a kashayam, right? So that again, I think we should revisit our mentalities to Indian medicine, and then actively start protecting that. Right?
No, in fact, I was just going to say that same point. In fact, I was just in Ayurveda Center for 21 days. And we have missed a lot by following the Western system of medicine, which is, of course, crucial in times of emergencies.
Yes.
But any other issue that we have, say, issue relating to the diabetics or kidney-related issues or other issues, we all run to allopathic hospitals and become, I would call, victims of the the pharmacy, the mafia. The Siddhas and Ayurveda treatment is far superior than what the Western medicine is offering for other ailments.
Without
Of course,
side
if it's-
effects.
Yes, if it's an emergency, of course, if I met with an accident, if I have got cancer, obviously I cannot rush to an Ayurvedic or a Siddha hospital for emergency cases. But for all other ailments, right from our childhood, in fact, because of the Western medicine, which has influenced in last 25 years, Ayurveda and Siddha and all these types of treatment we have given, we have missed the bus by not going back to this traditional system of medicines.
Absolutely, sir.
So there has to be a cultural change, and Ayurvedic and Siddha hospitals should outnumber the allopathic hospitals in the near future. That is my wish, at least.
Definitely.
No, of course, here I want to make a mention. Now, the allopathy doctors are against mixopathy. That issue is also going on. How we are going to deal with, I don't know.
No, madam, that may, I mean, as far as my knowledge goes, I may be wrong also. But this mixopathy actually there's nothing called mixopathy, because Ayurvedic and Siddha medicines only try to they cure the cause, whereas allopathy only cures the symptoms. So the medicines that are given is only a food, actually in the nature of a food. It is not a medicine per se; it's a food which is given. So there is no mixing as such. In my opinion, if people only want to go to allopathy, there will be no harm done if they also take side by side any Ayurvedic or Siddha. I don't think there will be any conflict per se. That's my opinion based on what my doctors told me the last 3 weeks of my treatment last month. They said that it can go in hand, and there will be no complications if it is done correctly. So I think we have to, there should be a cultural change. All of us having any problem, we should only go to Siddha or Ayurveda unless it's an emergency. That should come from within. Because we have a fever, we take a dolo and then fever subsides. So it's a miracle medicine. But if it's Ayurveda, Siddha, fever will be there for a couple of days. It will not come down maybe because it cures from the root. So the relief may not be instantaneous, but the health will be lasting.
Like Gokarnesan sir is saying, it's important that, we go back to our roots. In fact,
yes.
How many of us are ready to, applaud a child who is going to go study for Siddha, to be a Siddha doctor or an
Exactly,
Ayurveda, right?
exactly.
The minute a child says, oh, I'm writing for MBBS, then immediately that child becomes a superstar in the family. But if no child has even given an opportunity to, take
Correct.
up the traditional sciences.
Correct.
It's treated secondary only.
It's the mindset that matters.
We used to say that one. Pattadam party vaidyanthiri.
Absolutely.
That is the best, sir.
Yes, exactly. In fact, otherwise, if on the COVID, because of this, we say that when we have lost every tradition. Previously, we have never listened about all these things. Manjal industries, Tulasi, patti yarume care pannala.
Pannadilla.
Absolutely.
In fact, during COVID, all we did was take one Nellika a day, and the results were phenomenal. And when we actually sat and measured, 10% of the 10% of even 1/4 of the Nellika has much more vitamin C than your Chewy tablets.
Yes.
So it's actually speaking, allopathy is doing more bad to us than good. But
the allopathy doctors are
every family has a doctor. We don't have to go outside. Every family has a doctor. So
No, I
And
think
similarly-
both can coexist. There's no question
Yes,
of
yes.
this
Yes,
versus
it can.
that. Both can coexist. Both need to coexist because
Yes.
a good lifestyle would probably mean being more careful about what you eat and what kind of nature-driven foods that you can consume and have a healthy lifestyle. But when complications arise, there are certain complications, as Hari rightly put it, which can only be arrested by allopathy.
yes,
But after having arrested that, then you should probably go back and see how you can go back to a good maintenance of lifestyle.
Yes.
That's the right way to, instead of thinking that this is superior or that is inferior.
Yes.
It is better that both can coexist.
Yes. Similarly, I think even in case of goods, now most of the items you mentioned, which are geographically indicated, the protection is given. We are looking for alternatives, cheap imports from China. For example, the mats or statues or similar things. Because of the cheap imports from other countries, we are losing the touch here. So if more prominence is given here, like the Make in India campaign by the government, probably that can, in mass production, will ensure that cost is less and people can maybe probably instead of going for cheap Chinese imports, concentrate on things which are made in India.
Very true. In fact, inside the industry, there is again a competition where handloom versus parloom. So the minute a handloom jamakalam takes about 10 days to weave, but the quality and the durability is far superior. Parloom jamakalam will be done in a day or so, or even hours basis, and it's just a touch of a button. So these artisans who have mastered this art and who've been living easily, the artisans that I saw in a few documentaries, they have spent 60-70 years in that same traditional art form. So it was pathetic to see that ஒரு artisan oda life வந்து is so ரொம்ப ரொம்ப பாவமா இருக்கு. It's extremely sad, very sad state of affairs. And economics plays in, because obviously the minute we go to Kumbahar and we see a 4,000 rupee jamakalam and a 10,000 rupee jamakalam, we'll obviously pick the 4,000 rupee one, right? என்னைக்கோ ஒரு நாள் போட போறோம் எதுக்கு அப்படின்னு சொல்லிட்டு we'll buy one 4,000 rupees and we will be quiet. So but the artisan's life is at stake.
Like in fact, my father was in Erode, and Manjal Mandi Mari, the generation of huge money, which is in fact, that is a big market. Actually, it's a big market. No one knows about it. Erode Manjal market is something huge extent. You said is absolutely true. In fact, in the geographical index, different types of Gundu Manjal, Neetu Manjal, and they have the variety. Yeah. No one knows about in Erode. It is the whole market which is. But ஆனா ஒண்ணே ரொம்ப ஷாக்கிங் நியூஸ் வந்து தஞ்சாவூர் பெயிண்டிங் தஞ்சாவூர்காரனுக்கு அங்க இல்லன்னு சொன்னதுதான்.
ஆமா, ரியலி. அதாவது வந்து தஞ்சாவூர் நாங்க கேள்விப்பட்டோம் சார்.
கும்பகோணம் குசும்பாது இருக்குமா இல்லையாங்கிறது யோசனை. But when you said தஞ்சாவூர் பெயிண்டிங்,
yeah, in fact we went through the streets of Tanjavur. ஒரு நாள் நாங்க வந்து ஒரு 3/4 மணி நேரம் நடந்தோம் சார். பெயிண்டரை தேடி கண்டுபிடிச்சு அவர் வீட்டுக்கு போய் நான் ஒத்தனாமா இருக்கேன் என் ஜெனரேஷன்லயே அப்படின்னு சொல்றாரு அவரு. Right? So it's very sad. The art form has spread so wide that people are not coming to that geographical location to buy it anymore.
The point is that நாமளே அதை டிராப் பண்ணிட்டு தஞ்சாவூர் பெயிண்டிங். So that's why I said some catch is there. Let me tell the answer. நாமளே வரைஞ்சிட்டு தஞ்சாவூர் பெயிண்டிங் நம்மளே சொல்லி நமக்குள்ளே கொடுத்துருவோம். That's the.
And Jayalakshmi is a good artist also. She can draw.
Oh, I see. I thought she's master of economics, now master. Very good. So she has so many talents.
ஊருக்கு சும்மாங்கிறது போவே போறாது. நம்ம ஊரு அதை விட்டே கொடுக்க மாட்டோம். அந்த டாப்ல இருக்கும், கவலைப்படாது.
ரெண்டு காபி குடிச்சா சரியாயிருச்சு.
Jayalakshmi is a very good singer also.
Oh, that's a multi-talented.
Multi-talented.
Jack of all trades vana irukkalam, king of none.
Not like that. We have to say that.
One more thing I want to add is these artisan intermediaries are there.
Yeah.
Forget about direct marketing. They are being killed by the traders.
Very.
The cooperative handloomல when Mr. Sagayam was the managing director அவதோ இருந்தாரு. அப்பா அங்க இருக்கிற ஒவ்வொரு புடவையிலயும் வந்து ஒரு டேக் போட்டிருப்பாரு. How many hours it consumed, அந்த ஆர்டிஸ்ட் எவ்வளவு டைம் ஆச்சு, எவ்வளவு நூல் அவங்க யூஸ் பண்ணாங்க. அவங்க அதை பார்த்ததுக்கு அப்புறம் அதை யாரும் அதை விலையே பேச மாட்டாங்க, போட்ட விலையும் வாங்கிட்டு அந்த அளவுக்கு இருக்கு. இட் மேட் இன் சக்சஸ். கோஆபரேட்டிவ் ஹேண்ட்லூம் பிகம் a profit making இதாச்சு. இந்த எக்மோர் கோஆபரேஷன் became a profit making. அவ்வளவு lot of laborious pain they are undergoing.
Very thoughtful.
I have seen in my grandfather's place Jamakalam used for 80 years, 70 years. Family la. Machine made வேலைக்கு ஆகாது. But it is used to be so good quality. இப்ப யார் அது மாதிரி பண்றாங்க? Quick money. They want market.
தலையாட்டி பொம்மையை கேக்குறாங்க, அதையும் சொல்லிட்டா கன்க்ளூட் பண்ணிடலாம். Probably நம்ம ஆடியன்ஸ் தான் தலையாட்டி பொம்மையா டான் பாஸ்கோ.
மார்க்கெட்ல 2 வருஷத்துக்கு மேல ப்ராடக்ட் இருந்தா அவனுக்கு லாஸ். He has to keep on rotating.
Very true.
Very good lecture today by Jayalakshmi.
Thank you, sir.
Your introductory remarks and thanks to your seniors and colleagues was very unique one, like a prayer invocation song. You made remarks and thanks to your seniors and colleagues. You made a unique feature, and you like your topic geographical indications. You made an indicative webinar today, where we all interacted and we participated enthusiastically. And you also raised questions and asked, and made everybody to come to the front of the scene saying this and that. And finally,
Sir, the tax advocates geographical indication is Madras tax bar. We have to.
Very good.
Absolutely.
Fitting reply, sir. Very good fitting reply. So that shows the success of the webinar by Jayalakshmi. Thank you and good luck.
Thank you so much for the opportunity, sir. Neenga kudukra motivation da drives all of us. And Pudusa, we started reading for these topics only because.
Yes, a lot of research you have done. That's what your senior put it in the chart. You can see your senior congratulated you by saying you have a lot of research work. I think you have missed Visa. It is in the chart box. Venkatraman sir was seeing your program.
Thank
You
you.
can close it by a Carnatic song if you want. Geographical indicator of Tiruvarur.
இல்ல அது இன்னும் அது ரெஜிஸ்டர் ஆகல சார். என்வி சார் ஏதோ பேசிட்டு இருக்காரு. வெங்கட்ராமன் சார்.
Venkataraman sir.
He was there. He put some messages in the chat box. He still
So
there.
Venkataraman sir has left the meeting, but he has put a message.
Message in the chat box.
So,
இது வந்து geographical indication for music இன்னும் வந்து வரல சார்.
I can read out his message. He say very well researched data collection, nicely presented Jayalakshmi, best praise.
Thank you so much, sir. Thanks a lot, sir.
You can try for a GI for music also. And close this meeting with a song also, no problem.
Sir, நம்ம சாங் வந்து அப்புறமா செலிப்ரேஷன்ல வச்சுக்கலாம்.
thank you APS sir. Thank you all the participants. Thank you Jayalakshmi. And more from all these from the topic which you've spoken about. Thank you for taking us on a virtual tour, first all over India and then every locality of Tamil Nadu and showing it. Yes. So thank you. We enjoyed a lot and it was an eye opener for a lot of aspects as well. So thank you once again all for joining us. We will be uploading this session in our YouTube channel. We'll share the link. The next webinar will be the details of it will be shared tomorrow. Thank you very much once again. Please take care and stay safe. Thank you.